Bonjour everyone, I am YWCA and welcome to Parlez-Vous CEO, where we teach the corporate talk and get real about entrepreneurship. Each week, I chat with founders and CEOs who build businesses their way, through the failures, pivots, and breakthroughs. And they bring the fire. Plus, I'll drop some golden nuggets of wisdom from my own entrepreneurial journey. This is your space to grow, learn, and evolve with a true growth mindset. Remember, success isn't about perfection, it's about persistence. Now let's kick things off and get this party started. Welcome to another episode of Parlez-Vous CEO. My name is YWCA and I am your host, and I'm super excited to have with me Mindy Maude from Saratoga Springs, Utah. Mindy, it's a pleasure to have you. So for those of you just tuning in, Mindy is the Vice President of Domestic Violence and Residential Services at YWCA Utah, where she leads one of the state's largest shelters serving plus 200 people every night. She's redesigned services around trauma-informed care and helped shape statewide policy. She's also a 2025 Utah Business Executive Excellence honoree. Mindy, in your own words, and for the people who are just listening today and meeting you for the first time, could you introduce yourself and share a bit about your background and your story?
Yes, absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me in this space. I am honored. So I think a little bit about my background. I started out in what I would call a sheltered type environment. So I am from Utah. I grew up in a wonderful way where I truly had no idea that bad things happened to people. That was not my reality in any way. I really just thought that maybe the things that you heard about that were hard was happening elsewhere to someone else in a different way. And I went all the way through high school living that way. Into college, I took one mandatory 101 social work class where you had to do I think 20 hours of some type of volunteering. And I chose to do it with Volunteers of America, which is in Utah that serves our unsheltered population. And I would just describe it as that bubble around me, just someone took a pin and just gave it a good pop, where my eyes were immediately opened to the vulnerable populations that weren't far away, that weren't happening to someone else, that were right in my neighborhood, right in my backyard, and were people whose circumstances that were not crazy different to my own, but had just ended up with a different outcome. From that point on, I was changed, and my outlook and what I was looking for and what I was trying to do, I think I was going into business or something like that. And then I saw what needed to be done in our state, and I took a completely different approach. So I went into homeless services really young, and when I was 18, 19 into college, I did case management. I did street outreach, going up into caves in the mountain to bring up food. Then I did some supervision, and then I started to see what I could do on a bigger level. How could I extend this? So right now I'm helping one-to-one, but I can see systematically what our problems are and what isn't being addressed. And so then I start to just continue to move out into different roles. I ended in where I am now, which is what I love, in domestic violence. Domestic violence has so much intersectionality with everything. It doesn't discriminate in any way. It could be people that are unsheltered. It also could be people that make $300,000 a year. It is a wide range. And so that's kind of how I ended up doing this type of work.
That's awesome, Missy. What a good and powerful and profound career you chose. It's really beautiful to see. And Mindy, so now you oversee services for over 200 people every night. What do you feel have been strategies that were the most effective in managing such operations at this scale while maintaining trauma-informed and individualized care?
Thank you. That is such a thoughtful question, because trauma-informed really is the word to it. So shelters are a very tricky thing to run, in that the philosophy often is, how many people can you get in at the same time? You know, if there's a room that's meant for 4 people in a congregate setting, how can you fit 10? And I understand why that happens. It's because you want to serve as many as you can. However, what can happen in those instances is that you potentially are going to traumatize the individual more because of the space, the lack of autonomy, whatever it could be. And so you really have to look through a trauma-informed lens when you're taking on this type of scale to say, what can we safely do? Not what could I do, sky's the limit, but what can I do so that someone comes in, they are treated with dignity, they are treated with care. And that doesn't always mean that it's the biggest that you could do. We are the biggest shelter in Utah for domestic violence. There are some that hold 8 beds. There are some that hold 30 beds. We are by far the largest, but we also sit on 6 acres. We have 6 buildings. We have 1 building that is for walk-ins. We have 2 buildings that are shelter. We have transitional housing that's a building. We have childcare that's a building. And so for me, just to, I think, round out your question, it's, do you have that pipeline? Do you have something set up that at this scale that you can help them from start to finish? Because that is truly what the need is. Of course, in a domestic violence situation, immediate need is safety. It's just getting them out of wherever they are to somewhere that is secure and safe. Our shelter is not congregant living, so they do have their own bed, they do have their own room, they have a door, which is very important. But past that, the first night, then what? Can you help with housing? Can you help with jobs? Can you help with childcare? One of the hugest issues we have in Utah. Can you then help them rehabilitate to their goals? Or are you just a place that they, statistically, if you can't help long-term, they'll return to their abuser? And that's not to say always, but that is the statistics, that if you cannot help them with housing, a housing first philosophy is what we have, that if you don't have housing, you really can't secure any part of your life. If you can't help them with that, then anything at this scale will just keep having people rotate through instead of slowing it down a little bit, taking the time. An average shelter, the average stay is 30 days. Ours is 90. Because if you fled a domestic violence situation, you probably left without documents. Many of them have not been allowed to have theirs. So they don't have an ID. They don't have their birth certificate. It takes at least 30 days to get those mailed. And then they have to leave. It's not a good system. So we really, from a much bigger level, look at how can we really get them through what's going on so that they don't just return back to their abuser or back to us in 2 months, and we can actually give them self-sufficiency.
That makes sense. And Mindy, you've worked with city and state partners on the lethality assessment program.
Yes.
And navigated funding cuts. What's been your biggest challenge in driving systematic change, and how did you push through it?
This is a very complicated question because I think I'm still pushing through it. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say that I have ended up on the other side of really harsh policy changes or lack of funding or those types of things. I will speak first to the lethality assessment. That was very scary. So that was back in 2022. Utah had a very open homicide death that police had been called to many times. And that brought a lot of attention to, are we doing enough on those domestic violence calls, and how are we connecting them to services? So they passed what's called SB 117 in our session, which means that if a police officer goes out, they must call some type of provider. And for us, it usually is us, just being the largest and the most central. We're right in Salt Lake City. And that was very exciting because Utah has a very high rate of homicide. Our domestic violence numbers are higher than the national average. It is a clear need. But then we were also, I will speak for myself, of course, terrified about that type of volume. Our calls went up 300%. And that legislation that passed did not come with funding. So they asked us to do it, but they did not say, here's how you can hire more staff. Here's how we can get you more beds. It just said, serve more. So rising to that is a team effort. I have to take, and I have a wonderful team that I'm very proud of. I have to take them this hurdle, this challenge, which sometimes feels like is the nonprofit work, continuing to take them the impossible and say, how can we? Maybe we can't do it all, but what can we do? How can we prioritize? And that is a lot of how I move through these types of challenges. This year has been very challenging for funding. Federally, a lot of federal funding went away, or we have been asked to sign some type of letter expressing that it could be taken away mid-cycle, which is very uncommon. And that is insecurity. When you have such a big mission and the thing that funds the staff that serve that mission, or the supplies, the maintenance, the janitorial, it's a huge operation, could go away at any time. And so it is really just about that core team and the mission focused. Are we staying on our mission? Are we helping to empower women? Are we staying true to what our organization is? And I have found that if I can stay mission focused, especially in leadership, that we figure it out.
And so under your leadership, Mindy, why YWCA redesign shelter services and expanding houses resources, what did you feel were the business or operational changes that were the hardest to implement? And what did you learn from that process?
I think it was just about overhead and cost and how to. So we at Shelter, my advocate staff, who's amazing, receive over 100 calls a week. So if that goes to 300 calls, you then just have to go into a really logistical place. How many calls are we getting? How many staff do we have? How many case managers do I have to serve them? How much funding do I have for housing? And then we have to go out and we have to try to get creative. So that could be with private grants, that could be with non-federal. That's a huge change in fundraising for us. We made a significant fundraising turn to really, because domestic violence is very hard. And I can imagine that other nonprofits deal with this to an extent. We really can't market or put out, because we're not going to put anyone's face. We're not going to put our clients out there in any way. And so it's very hard to tell a story without putting a face, because that's what people really are impacted by. But we won't do that. And so it's been a big development push for us of what are the stories, what are the right places that we should be, because we know we have to find more, because we're being asked to do more. And so a lot of it is behind the scenes. So of course it's our frontline staff that are doing amazing work, but it's the development team as our major gifts. It's everybody trying to figure out different avenues at creativity, truly.
That's really interesting what you're describing. So how do you feel that you're able to overcome that hurdle? Because it makes the marketing a lot more complicated if you cannot use stories and testimonials. And at the same time, you constantly have to be fundraising.
Yes.
From what you're describing, it's pretty much as if you have a business, but you're uncertain about when money is coming in.
Yes.
So you always have to anticipate. You always have to be looking for more. So how do you manage that uncertainty? How do you navigate? How can you try to anticipate it somehow? How do you do it?
I mean, not to make it dark by any means, but we plan for worst case scenario. So when we did our budget for this fiscal year, we included no federal grants. We just said, if this year we truly get nothing, this is how much we need to fundraise. This is what our budget is going to look like. And we run on a multi-million-dollar budget, so there's so much that goes into it. And then we can work from there. I'm very proud of our development team, because we did get some of those grants, and that moves the needle up a little bit. But if you start planning from a place of, if truly we got nothing, how would we continue our services? That is what we do. And I will say also, additionally, for us, a lot of face-to-face is important, because we can't put out a billboard. We're not putting out a commercial. The types of organizations or families that want to give want to see where their money is going, of course. And so it's a lot of, touring buildings where we're not putting residents anywhere that could be seen. It's a lot of talking to people one-on-one, going to those types of things, to be able to connect with them about what their contribution would do. Because of course I understand that people want to understand that it's helping someone. And so that's really our focus, is I think more of the one-on-one. We have thought about how to do it on a larger scale, but it is very difficult.
I see. So there's a lot of human interaction needed, but it's tricky because you can't really introduce the fundraiser to, but I understand the need to connect to the mission.
I mean, just an example, yearly we do Candy Cane Lane, which is our Christmas event, where all of the families that are staying with us, usually on campus, we have about 100 children at any given time, their parents can come and shop for them. And we have a lot of people reach out during the holidays, which is wonderful. But I think an impulse for people is they'd like to see the child receive the gift, right? They want to be there. They're like, how can I be involved? And unfortunately, the answer is you can't. With dignity and respect and confidentiality is what I hold in the highest regard. And so it's, how can we bring people in? How can they help set up? Can someone volunteer in a different way? They make it so magical, but we have to think of ways that people still feel involved and still feel their impact well, we are not putting anyone on display for our own gain.
Wow, this is really interesting. And Mindy, could you share with our audience a bit more about the fundraising effort? What does it look like? Do you have a big team? What kind of marketing has been working well for you so far?
We have a small team. They are incredible. I think we could probably use double, but in the world of nonprofits, that's not where people give money, right? They don't give it to overhead. They don't give it to the development team. They don't give it to leadership. They give it to supplies, food. That's where they want their money to be going, which we completely understand. But that does make the people that are keeping us in this cycle, it makes it very difficult. So we have a rather small team, but they are incredibly impressive. If they hustle. This week's a good example. They connected us with the suffragette play, the Suffs, which was amazing, which is really correlates with what we do with women empowerment. We had a whole event there. We had our donors come. We had a partnership this week with Lush where you could come and make a bath bomb and do donations. So they are reaching out to all these businesses. And I think what is really cool and what we find all the time is that they want to be involved. It's just the invitation and the strategy behind it of what are the organizations that have already shown that maybe they are mission aligned with us because they have the best luck in that. We have an annual fundraiser where we have a speaker come that is very impactful, but it is all about the relationship. It's always about keeping those donors, talking to those donors, and making sure that they understand their impact.
Absolutely. So, Mindy, this is you've chosen a career that's extremely impactful and very soulful, and at the same time, it is running an operations. It's a
Yes.
business.
Yes.
How do you feel that you're able to navigate both of the best of the both worlds that are, can sometimes have such contrast?
Of course. I really struggled with that at the beginning of my career because I went into it because I was seeing the need. And then you actually get to the baseline of it and you have, deficits, you have speaking, you have all of these things that, if you will, kind of take like the magic or the joy out of it, right? Because while I do think it's critical to stay connected with your frontline staff, which I am, much of my attention does not go to any type of face-to-face interaction with the people that we are serving. Most of what I do day to day is keeping us going. It's the less soulful side of it, and certainly the more business side of it. And at times that can feel a little bit draining to not ever kind of see the impact. And I think that the balance that I found as I went forward is my connection with my staff that is serving them. I cannot be in the work, but I do know that my day-to-day of whether it be fundraising, whether it be, my 5th coalition meeting that month, whether it be going up to the Hill and asking for some type of funding, I know that is serving the people that they serve. I know it's a trickle down. And so sometimes those types of things become easier to me because I'm not as connected anymore to the survivor and what's happening to them, but I stay connected to them through my staff. I stay connected to the work and the mission, and that is how I keep doing it. Because if I lose that connection, my burnout is almost immediately because I don't particularly like it. I understand my role, but I love the impact. And if I don't stay connected to what I'm doing with my staff and what they're doing with the participants, I lose it so quickly.
I absolutely relate to that. When you don't have a strong why of why you're doing the things, that you can detach from the big mission. And your leadership, Mindy, has been described as both hands-on and visionary. You actively participate during crisis. So how do you show up? How do you balance showing up for your team in difficult moments while also taking care of yourself?
I don't know that's very kind. You've certainly done your homework. I would say that is what I strive for. It's very, so to answer your question, one of my biggest things that I'm the most proud of is what we put in place for our staff. So we have a different outlook on how we treat staff because for nonprofits, they go through staff monthly, right? The burnout, the trauma, you go through a crisis situation, you don't get what you need, and the turnover just continues and continues. And a few years ago, me and my leadership looked at this and we said, how can we be different? What can we do? So we moved us to a 36-hour work week. We changed our maternity leave to 16 weeks instead of 6. We changed our bereavement days to 10. We have a crisis response that if maybe they had to administer CPR or there was an escalator or there was violence or whatever it might be, they have to have at least 2 sleeps. And we have a whole list of this practice that we put into place. And I saw the changes. And what I will say to answer your question is that I must practice that with myself. So which was very hard for me because I think a lot of people, when they're in the C-suite and they feel this type of ownership, they're like, everyone else first, right? I hold this and everyone else takes a break and everyone else does what they need to do to take care of themselves. We hired in-house therapy. We did so many different things, and I have to show them that I am the same. So if there is a crisis that happens that needs maybe a higher level of care, I will step in and then I'll show them. I'll take 2 days off and they won't see me. And my directors are very competent and will step in my absence. But you have to practice what you preach. And so that is my balance. So when things are, because always one's going to outweigh the other. Maybe there's a ton going on that is more of crisis response, or maybe it's really heavy on more administrative, more operational. Balance is not something I think I can find. I know that it'll always be one or the other, but that it is how am I taking care of myself, but also how am I showing them I'm taking care of myself. If I show them, they do it, and it kind of goes down the line. And that's what I find when I'm trying to balance out crisis work, being hands-on versus my more leadership role when it comes to how operationally we are running, is that I must model that when either becomes overwhelming, that I take a break.
And so my next question is about hiring, because you're describing a very taxing career for the people joining in and needed to balance and needing to arrange maybe the work hours, the breaks. And I'm curious as to how do you recruit, how do you hire the people that are going to be the most suitable for this type of career? Because it's not everyone, right?
Of
The
course.
resilience, the qualities, the values. I feel it's a lot of things that need to work in harmony. So what are the qualities that you're looking for when you're hiring?
Mission motivated. We have a mission and movement section in our interview process that really asks them about their why. And also, I really think educates them on our mission. Our mission is to empower women and to eliminate racism. And that's a big mission. And not everyone is mission driven, and that is completely fine. But this might not be the correct fit for someone that isn't. It is difficult though, because I was that 18-year-old that was stepping foot into social work and had no idea, right? I had no idea how hard it was going to be. I didn't know what secondhand trauma felt like. So I of course wanted to help people in my head, but in practice, I really didn't know. And we want to still give those opportunities as well. But it truly is about asking questions about like educating around our mission and then asking them their why. So many things can be trained. We can train a lot of what we do, but I cannot train I can't train the want or the why in someone that either exists or it doesn't. And so the focus around our hiring is it equitable and is it mission driven?
And Mindy, you focus on recognizing and nurturing potential in those you mentor.
Yes.
What's the most important lesson that you've learned about helping women step into authentic leadership?
That they won't. It's been one of the most humbling experiences of my life, in the way that I was raised in a way that I was, dare I say, cocky or overconfident, that I would just go into rooms and I'm like, yes, me, I can do this. And then I started to step into these really female dominant spaces, which I love. I love working in those. And I would see these powerful, smart women that had been doing this probably decades longer than me. And I would start talking to them and I would be like, talk to me. And they just hadn't even been asked. No one had been like, what is your goal here? What is the ladder for you? What are you looking for in mentorship? And I found that throughout my entire career, that there are so many talented, strong women that do not have that mentorship, or at some point have been told that they can't, they shouldn't, that they have stepped aside for someone else. And my goal always is to put them in the spotlight, because often I don't have to mentor as much as people think I will need to. They usually have it in them. They usually have all the skills. They just need someone to be like, you, yes, you. And I have been blessed to have incredible women that have mentored me. I have excellent examples in my life. And that is if I can leave an impact, it is that. I have there are so many incredible women that I have watched just being given the opportunity, they run with it. They don't need hand holding. They don't need step-by-steps. They just need someone to say, you are strong, you are interesting, you are smart. Show us what you can do with this. Give them birth to show their ideas. I am overly touched with what they do when just given that small, like, yes, you can do that.
And did you have any mentors that helped you?
I did. I've had two really strong mentors that have, I think, showed me, I don't want to say the underbelly. I don't think that's the correct verbiage, but the hard stuff, right? Because when you're talking about social services, sometimes it's we're helping people, we're saving lives, we're doing all these things, but the underbelly is like layoffs and burnout and all these things that come with it. And those are the women I really credit that really guided me to show, here's what it's actually going to take. Here's the really hard, here's the time away from your family, here's the hard stuff. And that's what I've been really appreciative of, is those two women specifically. They were, of course, very motivated, and I'm very thankful for that, but they were also really like, hey, this is really, really hard, and it gets harder the further you go. And once you're at the top where I'm at, they were like, it's really lonely, and you're the bad guy, and you're in charge, and you make the hard. And that really prepared me. So now that I am here, I'm not shocked. And I have those, and I still have them to call on at any time, because I think it would have been really jarring to get here and work toward this and then realize that it's really hard.
And the two women that you're talking about, did you find them or did they find you? How
Both
did
found
that
me.
work?
Both found me.
You.
Both
they
found
liked what
me.
You did.
Yes. And I hope I returned the favor. Both saw me, both said, I like the way you think. I like the bigger strategic mind, and said, come with me. And I will always say yes. I'm a big proponent to, there's never too much knowledge. Teach me, show me, take me. I'm a sponge at anything. Even if I don't end up using it, it's valuable. It's valuable to see perspective. And I will be forever grateful for that.
That's amazing. And Mindy, so working in domestic violence services requires immense emotional resilience, as you know. What advice would you give to women who want to do mission-driven work, but worry about burnout or compassion fatigue?
I would speak about expectations. I remember maybe a little bit earlier in my career, I was having a very hard time with something that had occurred. And it was, I think, on a more dramatic level for me. I was like, all is lost. I'm bad at this. I can't do this. That type of verbiage to myself. And one of these mentors said to me, just because the system is failing does not mean you are failing. And I have hung on to that probably for the next 10 years up until now, where what I would tell people is that it's not going to be good. You are working against a system that is set up to hurt people. It is not set up to help them. It is not set up so that they can leave their abuser. It is not set up so that they can have a successful life after. You are set up to fail. And I think that if you are starting to build your emotional resilience, that is what you have to build it around. Because I think I went in thinking that I would get to a certain place and I would fix it. I would solve it. I would find the solution for why we can't find housing for them, why we can't get them qualified for different, whether it be SNAP or Medicare or whatever it is, why no one can afford childcare and they can't leave their abuser, why no one will take pets. And just like, I mean, the list could go on of the types of things that I was hoping to solve. And that emotionally, after a time when you can't, because the system is the way that it is, just wears you down and down and down. And I had to completely change my thinking of that is not a personal failure for me. I still show up every day. I still do my best. I still make at least one difference, and sometimes it's bigger than that. And sometimes it's smaller than that. Sometimes I leave the day and I'm like, I don't know if I did anything to help today, but you just keep going. And that is what I would tell someone that was just starting into this line of work that is so heavy, is find out what success means for you and failure means for you, and then see if those are actually realistic, because I think that's where people get really bogged up.
Wow, your resilience is really inspiring and incredible to watch. And
I mean, it's decades. It's decades. I've been doing this for decades. Young me was not so understanding of how the system goes.
So tell us about young you. I'd love to know, if you were meeting your 18-year-old self that you were mentioning earlier, what piece of advice would you share with her?
I think I would try to express to her that the pressure that she feels is her own. I, at a young age, starting out in this, felt so much pressure to be successful, to be the voice in the room, to be the one that knew the solution, to be the answer, to be all of those things. And I wish I could go tell myself that that was completely self-placed, and that whatever I had to give at that time was enough, and that I did not have to have this personal verbiage with myself that was continually saying not enough, not enough, not enough, push it harder, do it more, because she was really smart, she cared a lot, and that's enough. And I would tell her, you're going to grow over time, and I'm going to continue to grow. I imagine when, my 50-year-old self talks to my 35-year-old self, she's going to have a lot to say about who I am right now. And I think it's that constant reminder that it's enough where you are, because my 18-year-old self did not think that.
And Mindy, if you had a magic wand to help you with one thing with your organization, what would it be?
We don't want to go genie in a bottle. We don't want to go 3 wishes, just one.
Just one.
Stability. I would create financial stability. I am very aware that the people that work with us are not in it financially. Of course, they need to make a good living wage. They need to take care of their family, but there is so many other lines of work that are not as hard, that make a lot more money. And so I know the people that I'm working with are doing it because they truly care. And there is not a worse feeling for me than not being able to tell them if we're going to be able to sustain that. I want to be able to say, yes, we are going to get that federal funding. Nothing is going to be cut. Our legislative sessions are going to see the value in this work, and they are going to fund it. And so I think if I could wave a magic wand, it would just be to create that stability, because I want to be able to look at staff and say, yes, your job is fine. Yes, it is funded. Yes, the grant is funded. And that's not the current climate we live in.
Absolutely. It's really interesting how it's the people that care the most and have such beautiful values, and those are the people that you would want to take care of. And it's a difficult reality to face.
Yeah, very much so.
And Mindy, so what's coming up for this upcoming year, and where can people find you?
So you can find us at YWCA and how to get involved is there. We're always so excited for not just monetary donations, but we've had so many people reach out that say, I could come in and I could do a yoga class. Where could I send some donations? I just bought a lot of pajamas. I had my hairdresser the other day say, hey, do you take any tools? So go to our website, see how you can get involved with the work that we do, especially to answer your question with this upcoming holiday season. There's so many opportunities for giving.
Amazing. Mindy, it was really a pleasure to have you on the show and hear about what's your story and the many people that you're helping and how it was really inspiring. Thank you again for coming.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I had the best time.
It was my pleasure. And that wraps up today's episode. I am Annelise Cayez, and I can't wait to join you again next week. Thanks for listening to Parlez-Vous CEO today. If you enjoyed the show, leave a 5-star review. It helps us keep going. And connect with us on Instagram at Parlez-Vous CEO. I am Annelise Cayez, and I know some days are harder than others. On those tough days, think back to why you started. What you're doing today matters, even when you can't see the results yet. Ideas are great, but it's what you do with them that counts. Find everything we talked about today at parlezvousceo.com. See you next week, and you've got this.